Welcome, everyone. My name is Sandra Montes-Martinez. I'm the Associate Conference Minister for Western District Conference. And we're here this morning with our pastors, friends, and colleagues to see what happened in El Camino, what happened on the road of this relaunch, excited story. We have our Church Planting Commission in Western District is hosting this conversation to be able to encourage and to learn the journey of a congregation in their path to renew, reboost, relaunch, replant the congregation. And we are excited to be able to host this conversation and share the story. And we pray that God give us this as a resource for our own journeys in our own communities of faith. Pastor Tim, welcome. This is your time.
This
Tell
is
us
my
your
time.
story. What happened in El Camino of Relaunch a congregation, established congregation? Give us a little bit of the background, how you came here, and how has been this experience for you, for the community of faith, the congregation that you lead, and for other congregations in your community that are joining this journey.
So we have done this weird thing. We thought, looking at our church, looking at the decline, not just the decline in numbers, but the decline in energy, the decline in our ability to participate in the mission of Jesus in the community around us. It just seemed like we were stuck, and we've been stuck for a while. So we did try a number of easier fixes over the years. This is my 7th year here, so it's not like I came in and just changed everything right away, but it became clear that we needed to make some more radical changes, some bigger changes. And that's where we got talking about relaunching or replanting. That would allow us to change kind of everything all at once instead of picking, let's do this first, this. Well, let's try changing it all because everything is interconnected. So we had that conversation over years. We kind of talked about it. Then we got to a place where we agreed to do it at the beginning of 2020 with a great foresight to have the relaunch date as Easter of 2020. So obviously I have the prophetic gift of seeing the future or something, but so that did not happen. That went very, very obviously poorly for a lot of us. We kept thinking, well, we'll just wait a couple of months and a couple of months and a couple of months. We looked at a number of different dates that we could kind of keep preparing and reaching for, but it was, as all of you who've been a part of the church, it was hard for us as church communities. It was hard for us as professionals or anyone in this time. Everything in the COVID times that was hard has become that much harder. There's that much more weight on everything. But this allowed us to have more time between what was, who we were, and what we were becoming or hoping to become. Convincing a congregation, an established congregation, to take an entire year off would have been impossible, probably. We had 2 months where we were not going to have any service, official service. We were just going to gather together and prepare to relaunch. And we would have relaunched on Easter with many things still up in the air, because that's what happens, or replanting, whatever we're doing. There's just so many things that take so long, and you don't really get to it until you get to it. But with this additional time, it allowed us to have other conversations. It allowed for us to really, well, in some ways, it forced us to recognize that what was before really is gone. And that's something I think that a lot of churches and a lot of us are feeling anyway, that things have radically changed in the way that so many people experience the world, in the way that we experience church as well, and community. So for us, that allowed some additional connections to be made. We tried using that time as wisely as we could. We kind of accidentally ended up on a side conversation with another Anabaptist church in our community just outside of town, Holmesville Church of the Brethren. And the leader of their group was suddenly excited about this. Like, wait, yes, we could, what if we did this together? And that's really the hard thing in our planning and where we were going, is that we were going to a place where we didn't have enough people to make things work. Not just for enough people on Sunday so that it feels good, but enough people to, well, if kids show up, who's going to do a kids program? If this happens, who's going to do this? What if we wanted to serve a meal to the community, how could we do that? If we wanted to go in to help people, we just didn't have those people or time resources. So that's been a lot of this experience for me and for our community is this very kind of uncomfortable uncertainty of, well, I guess we should still do it, but is this, the thing in our mind isn't so much, is this going to work, as much as, gee, I wonder how quickly this will fail. Is maybe more of some of the thought there. It seems like we had a whole bunch of people before COVID who thought that we'd be excited about this. COVID comes and suddenly there's only a handful of us to do everything. So I would say that that's been hard on the community. Kind of, I liken it to in the Old Testament, where they're taking the Ark of the Covenant, they're trying to cross the waters again, and the waters don't part before they get there. Their feet have to get wet, and they kept walking. And at some point, you have to know that they believed something would happen, but they also believe that, if I drown doing this, like that can happen. That's at least a possibility here. So for us, a lot of this is something like that, or maybe we're like Peter walking out onto the water. Like we're going to sink, and hopefully we trust that Jesus will pull us back up, because there's a lot of waves, there's a lot of wind, and there's a lot of things that can go wrong. And the stress of this time too, we were an older congregation. There were people who were really excited about this type of idea and doing something like this that passed away before we got to do it. We always think we have so much time, and well, if we talk about it more, we do these other things. But and these weren't even related to COVID deaths, but just people who were important leaders, important drivers of the faith community. That's been a stress on an older community too, and kind of that wonder: did we just wait too long? Did we miss the chance? The right time to do this would have been 10 years ago, or 5 years before I got here, truthfully. So now that we've missed the ideal time, is it even worth going through the motions of trying anyway? Is God really calling us to this? Can God really do something, even in this tiny church community, in this tiny, it's not that tiny, it's 12,000 people. That's tiny to those of us participating here from Dallas, but in this area where the people drive to here to get groceries, so we're big in its own way. But what's the point of that? And just our call to faithfulness as a community, our call to prayer, the idea of praying that God can see the things that we can't. Because truthfully, like I have a 3-year-old and now a 5-month-old. There's an international pandemic like we've never seen before. Our finances are strained. We were a small dying church before I got here 7 years ago. And this is a terrible idea from just a logical perspective, right? If we were going to go and weigh everything out, like these are some really bad idea things, except that if it's God's idea, if it's the Spirit moving us to participate in these other ways, then it's not so much about what we see as success as much as it's about us being faithful and getting our feet wet and hoping that the waters part.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you for open to share El Camino, or the road that bring you to this decision, to this really hard work, because we need to understand it takes courage to change things, to be part of something that can be changed, the culture of the structures, even the name of the congregation for the years to come. So thank you for have that courage to bring us to this road, to this path, en este camino of renovation, replanting a congregation. I understand, and I know you have so many experience that you can learn from. I would like you to name at least 3 of these meaningful things. If we have to just shake the hands of a pastor or a leader in the way, and they say, tell me 3 tips that you have learned in this camino, en este camino. What would you say to us?
Sure. So that the 10 steps you all need to exactly follow include the first 7 being all prayer. Right? There's no magical way. Each thing has to be unique to its community, and we have to be the way that we looked at 2 questions. How will this help us to develop as the followers of Jesus, to be discipled in that way, to grow in our faith, not just in relaunching, but in everything we do as a church. That's one of the main reasons we gather as a community, to draw closer to the cross, to grow as disciples. And the other question is, what are we doing to make it easier for others to be invited alongside us, to follow Jesus alongside us? So that's the idea of kind of our individual or communal growth, but also our outreach and reaching into other people. So how we answered those questions will be different than other people will. When we asked about our church name, it's not like we went in saying, well, these are the changes we need to do. It was, well, is this church name helping us to become more like Jesus? Or is it just a name? Is it neutral? Is this helping other people follow Jesus? Or is it something that's in the way? And if you know your neighbors and you can start to have conversations with them, and I've been in this community long enough that my neighbors are honest with me, you can start to hear that, well, that's a church for people who believe something different, or that's a church for a different type of people. Once you take Mennonite out of the name, maybe people will experience that differently. Going into relaunching, we did not know if that would be true. That was the big question. Well, you're just changing the name. I mean, we're doing a number of other things, but that's what it feels like to people, because we changed the sign. Wow, you're just going to change the name. We relaunched on October 31st. It wasn't some grand magical success of hundreds of people. Right? We had about 46 people our first week. We weren't breaking 20 before. But every single week since then, we've had new people come. Every single week. That's never happened. We get one new person maybe in a year. This last week, the new person was brought by someone who was a new person 2 weeks ago. You got to see this new place. This place it just feels different. I feel a peace here. And these other connecting points. These are, again, things that seemed impossible. I was going to run the children's ministry with somebody else from our church, maybe being able to help. We weren't sure they'd be able to help out. Well, I can do it if nothing else comes. 2 weeks before we relaunched, the Church of the Brethren said, okay, we want to be a part of this. We'll move our church time. So they moved back their church start time so that they could essentially attend both churches if they wanted to. And right now they are essentially helping to run our kids ministry. They're a part of our music team. They're a part of our greeters at the door and other stuff. And then they go off to their church afterwards, most of them, and have another church service. In fact, this Sunday, they'll get to hear me twice. I'm preaching at their church too. I'll try to make it a little different, but it's those little things then, how you ask those questions, and then just the next bit is you're not going to have it all figured out and lined up, and that's okay. The Saturday before our relaunch on the 30th, we had an event in the evening hoping people would come, and almost nobody came. Right? Almost nobody came. It was very small. We had 100 or 200 hot dogs. We were ready, and we had like 40 hot dogs that we went through, maybe, not even. But that day, we finished almost all of the things that we just hadn't got to. We got signs up outside of our church, other types of decorations. We got other things fixed inside the church. We had lights changed inside of our church. All of those things happened just in that last week. And as one member of our leadership team said, we have to have a date. We have to get there, and we have to hold on to it and do it, because if we don't, we'll never get to any of those things. And it was true. Somehow it was the Saturday before, and we were just getting it all done just in time. And we had ordered new artwork and stuff to go around the church. And that arrived 6:30 on Saturday night. We put it up at 7 as our event was ending. Like, these all happened when I look back at the events and other stuff, it seems very stressful. But in the midst of it, it just felt like things were just kind of happening, and we did the best with what we could. And again, there's a part of me too, because we went door to door. We did a bunch of things. We did all the right things that in a normal city should see 100 people at our church. We didn't, but we're not a normal city, and these aren't normal times.
Definitely.
And it's a church replant or ministry isn't made or broken. It's like a wedding. It doesn't matter how good the wedding is. Well, maybe it does. It's nice to have a good wedding too. It's nice for things to go smoothly, but that's not going to be how the marriage goes. And that's not going to be how the rest of this ministry goes. So we have to, I do have a number of advisors that have helped me in this. And one of them said, you know what, next week, it's going to be another relaunch, and the week after, and the week after. You can change, you can adapt. It'll be different a little bit each time, and that's okay. There'll be new mistakes, there'll be new things that go well, there'll be new this and that. And if you don't have those mistakes and those other bits, then maybe we're not kind of pressing enough to actually try the new things.
Tim, in this Camino, in this path that you've been working on for the last 2 years, to come to this big event and the expectations that you have and what really happened, I see great collaborations and connection, because you see involving not only your congregation, but embracing other in your community. So how this collaboration enrich the life of both of the congregations when nothing happened according to plan, when you have to change not only the day, the year, and rethink all these things, how these connections and collaborations are crucial when we try to do this hard work.
I mean, this is tiring. Like I think we're all tired from pandemic things anyway, but I'm tired. And the one thing that drives ministry stuff forward is often an excited leader or passion or excitement in there. And that's hard. There's life things, but then also pandemic. And oh, by the way, we're going to go and do all of this relaunch stuff. But particularly the leadership that's come over from the Holmesville Church of the Brethren. This is a church that was outside of town and they felt stuck for a long time. They're just kind of far off of the path of anyone going there. Everything's changed. They have a pretty building. They have committed people, but they were just so excited to come here. Said, now there's kids. There's kids again. We can be Sunday school teachers again. We went from having one person at our church who did all of the kids ministry to now we have four in the room at one time. And when there's kids there, they all have tons of attention and get tons of love. And the programs that they were doing before were great. And it took a lot of work, but now they're splitting it 3 or 4 ways. And it's this dynamic, incredible thing. And there's excitement that they are bringing to this that maybe a lot of us didn't feel because we've been slogging at it for so long. My expectation on that first week isn't the same expectation as others. I didn't promise numbers through the door. One of my disappointments maybe was that people that were connected to our community over time didn't come back. Like they knew this was happening. They said, yeah, that's a great idea. And they said, okay, but also I'm going to go over here instead. And that was a bit of a letdown. Mostly that it felt like the people from our community weren't coming. We were getting some new people. We were getting the Holmesville Church, but those other people who had been longstanding parts of this just kind of faded. It seemed like they faded into the background. But the person who runs our sound, who is like a longtime member, he built our sound system. Old man comes over to me after. He said, Pastor Tim, just looking around at this is the first week. Well, I'm feeling sorry for myself that there weren't more people, and I'm turning the temperature down, doing some cleanup. He said, it is just so rewarding to have been a part of something that was so successful.
That's
his experience. I was like, I need to listen to your voice, not mine.
That's great. So we're learning that this is not a job for the pastor only. We need to embrace others. We need to learn from others. Beside your community and your congregation, you have an institution that you coming because you're part of a denomination, a conference. And tell us a little bit about how these collaborations with institutions and your structures can be helpful or not as we endeavor in this type of work when we reimagine and thinking about our established congregation.
But I would say that our conference ministers were very encouraging. I went through a program with the Mennonite Mission Network. I went through some other stuff. We were able to receive some funds from some different organizations too, and that was very helpful. But as far as even little things like how do we change our name? How do we do this? How do we do that? There was just nothing. There was nothing for us. Nobody knew how. And maybe one of the disappointments afterwards were that some of the institutions who I think we're excited about this and maybe gave some money to it. They kind of advertised some of the stuff like, hey, look, this thing we're doing. No, nobody called us afterwards. No one's called me to ask how I'm doing or how our church is doing or how did those things go. Right? We were just kind of like, this was something we did. Hey, and we sent some money there, which was great. Right. And some of that money came a little later, which pushed our relaunch back. But that without that, we couldn't have done this. Like that's what we needed to infuse, not just some additional financial might to what we were doing, but that's what we needed as an encouragement to our people here who just felt tired doing it all on their own. Oh, good. Somebody else believes in this, even if I'm starting to doubt it. Someone else believes enough to have sent this. Okay, well, maybe things will be okay enough. So a lot of the Mennonite structures and stuff just weren't helpful for being able to do this. And one of the things that maybe came up as a surprise is some of the Mennonite preferences in our structures too, is this idea where we all collaborate and talk together and we decide things together, which is beautiful as an idea. But what ends up being is this slow talk. We need to get a committee to talk about it. We need a committee to pick the committee. Like it just kind of builds and slows down on top of itself. And so sometimes maybe the pushback I felt I was receiving were because they thought we were being like irresponsibly fast, as if, doing these church relaunch things that they had talked about 5 years before I got here. They're like, nothing we did was a new idea or radical, but that we were like moving too quickly, or we didn't like do enough collaborative, like slow discernment. But it's when the Spirit moves and when we're called to do things, it's one thing to know the right things to do or to talk about the right things to do. It's an entirely different thing to just do them. And until you do them, they're just ideas. And once they're put into practice, suddenly it changes, and it changes on the fly. And that's okay. And that's beautiful in its own way. But if we never get to actually doing the things, then we're just wasting our time talking about stuff. So that was kind of my sense in some of the structure things. There just wasn't anything to do something like this.
Oh, this is important because we need to understand that as an institution, as a denomination, as a conference, at all levels, we need to learn how to do this, not just know how to plant churches, but how to reboost our congregations. And I think this is something that we need to be open to, always updated. We cannot just leave it what we did not even 3 years ago, because the world is completely different. So what is the things that we need to let go? What is the inventory of our structure is important more than ever, to see what we need to focus on and not waste the energy in things that are not working for us. So one of the things that we suggest in our church planting is do an inventory of your leadership. Who are you really counting with? If we're not doing the mission, if we're not doing what Jesus called us, that is spread the word, is connecting with others, is walking with others, just focus where we're putting our energy and what are the tools that we need to continue being a church that is relevant in our communities.
One of the ironies that we have is we want to be vital communities of Jesus, right? These Jesus following communities. And the irony is that as we focus on what can we do to be revitalized as a community and to have that vitality, this inward turning, trying to go and care for ourselves, actually works against us. And it's discouraging and slows us down. Vitality and excitement only happens when we start to go out to the fringes a little bit, when we start to take some of these risks together, when we have these new mission experiences or these new things that are happening, because that's what really develops us as a community. And the excitement and the connection that you have from those kinds of things are entirely different than just gathering together on Sundays. And as we talk about, we've already gone through the biggest communication shift of the last 500 years. And if we didn't realize that, churches figured out how to go online pretty quickly during the pandemic. We adjusted. None of these are bad or good, but we can learn. We can do things differently. We don't have to be the same way that we were, as long as we, I think, stick to those guiding questions for our churches. Are we growing as disciples? Is this actually leading us towards Jesus, not just in knowledge, but in our expression in our life? And is this inviting others? And I think one of the things, and I think maybe some people felt anxious about us doing this, both in our community and throughout some of the Mennonite communities, is that we took Mennonite out of our name. That's not done just because Mennonite should come out of the name. That's done because of what our neighbors told us. We don't use hymnals here much anymore. We have some in the pews, but we don't use hymnals because almost no one in our community can read music. None of our neighbors can read music. We can still do hymns. We just have to think about doing things in a different way that's then accessible and easy for people. What are the things that make it hard to come to a church? We can change that. Let's be united and connected in Christ, right? Let's keep that, and everything else to me is up for grabs. Everything else can be unique and a unique expression to what's happening in our communities there. The songs and the music that we do here, I hope are not done at all the other churches in the Western District because you're different cultures.
Thank you, Tim, for making that point. How to make that good things that we have attractive and accessible for others. That is not our normal Mennonite carols that we meet every Sunday. How we really are welcoming church, not in all aspects of our mission. How we really bring that diversity in our community, in all aspects of the life of the church. How we really be inclusive. When somebody came up to our door, how we receive it. We learn from, in our peer group from one of our congregations, the Houston Mennonite Church, how they changed the whole structure, how they welcome people when they are at the door of our congregation. I mean, they're coming to us. So what is the work we need to do to feel the person that this can be my house? This can be my church. This can be my community of faith. How we celebrate the years, the service we have being relevant, to have trust, commitment, and love to one another. These are the questions that we have today. And today we have Tonya Wenger. She's the chair of our Church Planting Commission. And as you know, she leads this conversation in the spring with Tim. And I'm very honored to work with her. She's a pastor and a great role model as a leader. So Tonya, do you wanna help us a little bit here in our church planting commission? What we're doing in our conference? Tell us a little bit what we're trying to do this year in order to be really committed to our mission in Western District.
Well, on the Church Planting Commission, under Sandra's leadership, we are working hard on clarifying the focus, the mission, the vision, the work that's most important for the Church Planting Commission. So working on some strategic planning stuff right now, thinking about how we focus in and support our church plants, our church planters, how we engage with Western District Conference congregations like this conversation, helping our congregations in Western District Conference all over the place to think about and to really lean into how we are engaged in mission and church planting, the questions Tim is asking, and the modeling he has done for us. Thank you, Tim. One of the things I'm most encouraged by in your description is just modeling really a spiritual discipline of taking risks and trusting and stepping out and not relying just on yourself, but the people around you and the people God brings. So yeah, I would say the Church Planting Commission is in a period of kind of gathering focus and sort of equipping ourselves to be more effective in the conference and with congregations.
Thank you, Tonya. We trying hard to be proactive. We have done a lot of work, try to figure out how we do mission in our conference, in our congregations. Now is the time to get all of those knowledge and put it in a plan and move it forward. And then I think it's a great value sharing the path, how we doing this with others. we want to close our time to see what's we're looking forward. What is in El Camino next for this community of faith that are just not embracing changes, but doing it, just not thinking about it, but doing the work, the hard work, asking the hard questions, and learning on the way.
Yeah, there's a real kind of field of dreams moment to this, which is funny. I've never seen the movie, but the idea is if you build it, they will come. And trying to do the right things and the uncertainty around it. When we relaunched or replanted at the end of October, the first thought, our initial hopes were that we could reassess everything if we made it to Easter. But things were grim enough that we were like, maybe we'll make it to Christmas. Maybe Easter, I don't, but now I would say that there's been enough positive momentum, energy-wise, finance-wise, all those other things, that the question will now become, what will this look like in a year, as opposed to, will we make it? And that's very, very different. One thing that has just happened for us, and this only happens because we did this thing and something accidentally happens, and because God moves in ways we can't see. There's someone in the community who I kind of know, and I've known a little bit on and off, but he saw what we were doing here, and so he showed up with his young family. And it turns out he had been a part of a group here that was starting a non-for-profit organization where they were getting material goods to help people in need, whether that's clothing or they just did a hygiene drive, other things. There's needs in this community. Okay, let's try to meet those needs. Once a month, we do this meal. Would it be okay if we did that at your church? We don't have enough people to do anything like that here on our own, but suddenly another group came here, was able to participate, and asked to do the thing that we wanted to do, but knew we just didn't have the energy to do. Suddenly it switched to, well, now we're going to have a once a month community meal here. All we have to do is give them a key. This is amazing. And we got talking and they said, well, we know we have all these supplies that we're trying to get to people. It's just tough. We have these storage lockers. So we're paying this money for these storage lockers. So we go there, we pick up the stuff afterwards and we drive it to people. And I said, did you know that our church has an actual pretty nice basement? So we walked down and they said, I think we'll have enough donations that maybe we could use one room. Would that be okay? Fantastic. So now suddenly we have this ministry that's going on in our church basement, getting some life in an area that's nice. It's just we don't have enough people. And they ended up getting so many donations that said, just use as much space as you need. Almost the entirety of our basement is now sorted and organized materials to be given to families in need or people in need in our community. They're opening up the doors of our church to help people. And we had to do, as a church community, almost nothing, but we had to get our feet wet. And it was only when our feet got wet that these waters parted in ways that we could not have. There's no way we could have done that. So the excitement and the hope moving forward is that we'll continue to see new things, that we'll continue to take enough risks that there will be surprises. And what we tell the good, there's still heartbreak all mixed into this. The people who didn't come back or who are upset of this or other, there's just so many things. But looking at some of the positive things, looking back at how far we've already come, it's not because we were so great or I'm so dynamic, because I'm not, or that all of this we did not do this by a force of our own personalities or our own abilities. These things happened because the Spirit moved and we were able to be a part of that.
Thank you. This is another example of how legacy congregations can be able to do more than just serving our members, to be open arms for other organizations, even to other congregations to nest on our buildings. And this week I hear stories of other congregations celebrating with their host congregation, the one that they share the space with, and eat together and have a really good time. We hear this morning from Austin, and we hear from Peace Mennonite how they host, other congregations, probably other ethnic congregations, probably other ministries or nonprofits they are in the community and looking for that space, and we have it. We have the resources. So this is a way to energize our community of faith too. Some people say, well, probably I'm not in the place to relaunch our church. This is so much work, but it's small steps that we can do in order to make those connections, to make those collaborations. We just need to open our doors and be intentional about it. Be maybe uncomfortable about it. Yeah, it's hard to share our space. It's the trouble. Who's gonna clean the bathroom? Who's gonna pick up the trash? But this is what being Jesus followers means to get uncomfortable, get out of your comfort zone in order to serve others. Is a good uncomfortable way to serve Jesus too. It's a good way to serve Jesus. It's a good way to serve the people. One of our congregation here in Dallas, we had the story of a congregation that opened the door for English class. And this couple came to receive English class because they're Spanish. And these people then become members of the congregation, grow, went to seminars, prepared themselves, and now there are pastors. And they came to the Mennonite congregation for an ESL class. Who would I think that just opened the door for somebody to do ESL class will give the beginning of a new congregation? This is the story of Casa de Dios and the pastors Isabel and Natividad Hernandez. So it's real impact that we can do just to open our doors and be intentional and do collaborations and do connections with our community. So Tim, I would like you to close this conversation. You tell
Sure.
us how you get here. You tell us part of the process. I mean, probably we couldn't write a book about this, and what looking forward in the next year or two.
Yeah, everything now is just, well, there's Christmas and there's Easter. There are these things that are the normal rhythms of what we used to do before coming up. And how do we approach those in ways that continue to be true to Christ at the center, but also continue to be true to such a way that not only challenges us as disciples, but welcomes our neighbors in, or goes out into the neighborhood instead of just trying to get them in the building, that's out and engaging in those ways. Again, I've already referenced this before, but from the wise words of the Christian rock group Petra, the waters only part when your feet get wet. Will we move beyond just belief into action? And I think that is the call of faith for all of us. And I could not have, even a month before we relaunched, I was hopeful that maybe 1 or 2 people would come from the Brethren Church, maybe. I didn't expect it's only when we actually got to those points when we were very wet, when our heads were barely above water, that suddenly things started to move. And they moved in amazing ways. Not so much in such a way that everything's all fixed and it's still going to be uncomfortable and it's still going to be hard, but it went from entirely impossible to, maybe there's something more that can happen that we can't foresee. Let's keep walking.
Thank you all of you for being here. If my prayer is in this busy time, we can be the feed the part of the water. We can be the feed the part of the water, serving the people of God. God bless you all. Peace be with you. Thank you for connecting.